Your college football game day has come early.
Goes down the field for Sicky, goes up high. He's got get away from the top speed, and the ball is free. Woo! What a hit! You got barbecue back there.
From underdog triumphs to powerhouse showdowns, we've got your winning playbook covered. It's BetQLU with Chris Mack, RJ Choppy, and John Martin. Presented by BetMGM. The sports book born in Vegas. Download the app today. Please gamble responsibly.
And here we go, live coast to coast on the BetQL network. We have arrived at week 12. It is BetQLU alongside RJ Choppy. I'm Chris Mack. Don't forget, you can get the show on demand whenever you want to, right there inside your Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. Just search BetQLU. We're also here for you live coast to coast on the BetQL network every Friday night and Saturday morning, and always on the Odyssey Sports YouTube channel as well. It is BetQLU, presented by BetMGM, the sports book born in Vegas. Some very big games to get to. We'll get to those in a few moments. We'll also put some teams on upset alert. We will even talk college hoops for just a second today. Oh, yeah. Alongside RJ Choppy, I'm Chris Mack. John Martin off again this week. We tried to get him to chime in from whatever Caribbean locale he may be in, and it was one of those very choppy Max Headroom kind of videos, and all we got was Memphis, American Conference, get back to me when the Big 12 is in chaos. And so we said, okay, fine. We'll get back to you when the Big 12 is in chaos, John. We'll bring him back into the fold next week. There's a lot to talk about, including chaos in the Big 12, maybe some in the ACC. Hell, maybe the SEC as well. In the Big 10 taking over the top 10, top 5 of the college football playoff rankings. Yeah, we've made it this far. The beatings will continue until morale improves, or at least until the CFP field is set. Let's start with the biggest takeaways from last week, Choppy. Ole Miss didn't just upset Georgia. Ole Miss stomped Georgia. They rolled them. Miami dumped Georgia Tech. BYU just barely, by the hair on their chinny chin, escaped the holy war against Utah. And Bama took LSU to the woodshed in their house. So I guess last week, which game surprised you the most and or, in your opinion, shook up the college football playoff picture the most?
Well, the surprised me the most was the way Ole Miss beat Georgia. Georgia doesn't lose. In fact, I think that was the 4-year anniversary of the last time Georgia lost to a non-Alabama team. It was that week.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, Georgia doesn't lose like that. They looked. Georgia controls the line of scrimmage. When they played Texas, you could tell the Tech. If you were to watch that Texas and Georgia game again, and you were to say, what's the main takeaway from this? And you would say, oh, Texas has never played in the SEC before. That's the main takeaway, because they did not have the ability to withstand the pressure up front.
Yeah, they just didn't look strong enough, right?
Exactly, right? Exactly. They haven't put their NIL money there. The SEC, you put your NIL money there, right? Or at the quarterback too, but you got to have it there. So nobody has done that to Georgia in a very, very long time. And Carson Beck looks really turnover prone. I think it's now 7 in the last 3 games. So that's the biggest surprise. But, I mean, the game that really changes the college playoff to me is, I mean, it put Bama back in. Let's be fair. Game put Bama back in. So that one really kind of did it. The others, I mean, had an impact too. I mean, BYU, I mean, they could have been out of it. I mean, obviously there's going to be a Big 12 team either way. Miami doesn't really open the door for anybody losing, because if they still beat SMU or whoever they play in the ACC, they're going to be in. But I mean, Alabama got themselves back in this thing.
And this is why I don't have a problem with the way the rankings came out this week, because we got a whole lot of Paul, let me tell y'all, Paul, as soon as the rankings came out about Georgia being the first team out. And it's real simple. We know it's going to go this way every year, whether there's 2 teams in the playoff, 4 teams in the playoff, 12 teams in the playoff, 64 teams in the playoff. I don't care. It's going to go this way every year where the committee is going to take into account most seriously and most weighty what you've done most recently. So if it comes into a weekend where, Alabama, yeah, they didn't just win. They took care of business, and they did it on the road in the SEC, in a place where nobody does that. And, Georgia, they didn't just lose. They got rolled on the road, but still, they got rolled by a team that hadn't beat them, I think, but once in the last decade and a half, at least in Oxford. That's what the committee's going to take into account here. And if you're not happy with Georgia being the first team out or being ranked as low as they are, 12th, I think it is right now, and just on the outside looking in because Boise would be the final team in, then guess what? Georgia's got their opportunity this weekend, Choppy, and we'll get into this game in a couple minutes, but it's as simple as go out and win the big games that are still out in front of you.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's the reality of it. Now, we could have the argument about does Indiana and Penn State and these other teams deserve to be where they are, but the reality is also this is a made-for-TV event, and I think oftentimes people don't realize that. This is a made-for-TV event. So what does that mean? To me, it means that the committee already knows, assuming the things are going to happen, basically where these teams are going to be. If this was the final ranking, I think Georgia might be, now, like, the assumption is Indiana's going to lose to Ohio State. That's right. The assumption. Mm-hmm. And the assumption is they're probably going to lose by more than 10 points. I don't think a 1-loss Indiana is in over a 2-loss Georgia or a 2-loss Ole Miss, right? I don't know. I don't know. They might be. I don't know. I think the committee kind of does. They kind of toy with our emotions a lot. And they do this for made for TV, and then eventually they've got their own 12-team idea who they think is going to be in, assuming the records are kind of close together.
I kind of compare it to, for those of you that are wrestling fans, they know where they want the story to end up.
Yeah.
It's very similar to what Paul Levesque, Triple H, said last year when they were talking about the Roman Reigns Cody Rhodes thing. And they knew where they wanted it to end. It was just a matter of how do we get there, right? How do we arc the story? Same thing, I think, and I think you're right, with the College Football Playoff Committee, Choppy. They kind of have an idea of what they think it's going to look like. It's just a matter of, how do we get them there? So, for example, like you said, Indiana, doing all right now. 5th in the country. Okay, it's highest Indiana's been ranked in decades, if not generations. But let's be honest, there's 7 seed in the bracket. We don't know how much longer this is going to last because they still got to play Ohio State. They'll fall out. And at some point, it'll open a seat back up for another SEC team. I'm fully on board with you there. I believe that they look at it that way and they try to plot things out. This team's going to go this way and fall off. This team's going to come climbing up this way and jump into the bracket. But I think there are some instances here where we could end up with some interesting conflicts. If the ACC should somehow present a second team that's worthy, if SMU continues to play the way they are and wins the conference championship against Miami. Okay, well, now I got 2 ACC teams that are probably worthy. Maybe not worthy, but one's got to go in and the other one may be worthy. Same thing in the Big 12. And we'll talk about Colorado later. If Colorado rolls all the way to the Big 12 championship, but there's still another team there, BYU maybe, a 1-loss BYU who only loses in the conference championship to Colorado. Now all of a sudden you're taking those other teams and shoving them in. That's where the storyline gets muddled.
Yeah. It does get muddled, and now you got to be human, and you've got to figure out who's better. Is a 2-loss Tennessee better than a 1-loss BYU? Is a 2-loss Ole Miss? How do they compare with a 2-loss Miami if Miami were to lose? I think the only way to be a 2-loss team and make it into the playoff is to be in the SEC or the Big Ten. I don't see a 2-loss team in the other conferences making it in. But then again, this 12-team ranking really did throw me for a loop. Indiana jumped 4 spots. They went from 9 to 5.
Yeah.
Right? They went from 9 to 5, and they struggled with a bad Michigan team.
So are Indiana and BYU, in your opinion, getting disrespected? We've heard that from a lot of fans, both the Cougars and the Hoosiers. Oh, there's no respect for these teams. And look, I understand it to an extent. Like if my team were undefeated in a major conference like the Hoosiers are right now, and there were 1-loss teams ahead of them, especially like I look at Penn State, for example, and I'm a Penn State guy. We know that. Penn State's got 1 loss, and their best win is against Illinois at home. Indiana, they've got 0 losses, and I understand they still have Ohio State waiting out there, but their wins, their biggest wins, are no less impressive than beating Illinois. So, I mean, there is a level, I think, of you've got to prove it week after week after week and get yourself into that upper echelon before anybody takes you serious.
Yeah. Well, wins matter. To me, who you play matters more. I would rather take a team with 1 loss that has a better schedule than a team with no losses with a weak one. That's just me. But it's real. You can't leave out. I have no problem where Indiana is. I have a bigger problem. I shouldn't say I have a bigger. I have a problem with. I don't have a problem where Indiana is at 5. I have a bigger problem. They went from 9 to 5 by struggling with Michigan. They should have been there to begin with. There's nothing they did over the weekend that says, hey, we got to jump this team 4 spots.
Yeah.
That to me, there was nothing that they did there.
That was a little bit of a make good, I think, from the committee. What's interesting now is we've got these 4 prospective matchups, potential matchups as they would be on the current week's rankings. You'd have 5-seed Ohio State hosting 12-seed Boise State and laying 19. Penn State hosting Ole Miss. That would be a pick 'em. You'd have Indiana hosting Alabama, which is a wild thought, and getting 5 points at home. And you'd have Tennessee at home in Knoxville laying 2 against Notre Dame. All of those lines are somewhat close to what I had in mind when the bracket was first revealed. Except for, I still come back, and we talked about this last week, RJ, like Boise State laying 19 to Ohio State. I get it would be on the road. It would be in Columbus, all that. I can't get beyond 14.5 before I start to go, whoa.
Yeah, well, also don't discount the fact that the committee might do this, float this out there, just to get the Vegas reaction.
That's a good call.
Right? Because as soon as I saw Indiana was going to host Bama, I was like, oh, Bama will be favored by a touchdown or more. Now, obviously it wasn't. Would you say it was 5? But I do think they kind of go down that road and say, all right. And you see this with college coaching hires all the time. A school will float a name, and
right.
And I'm a huge proponent of this. If I was an athletic director, I would just be floating names to the media and see the reaction.
Loose lips, choppy. Tell all the sources what's up.
Yeah, just gauge the reaction. just float the name, put it out there on SportsCenter, or in this case, put it out there to Vegas, and let Vegas set a line. And because if you've got that, and that Alabama is a 5-point road favorite over Indiana, and and you could go with the transitive property. Okay, this team beat Alabama, so this team needs to be here, Indiana there, Alabama. I think you could kind of find a way to muddle your way into this thing.
Either way, whether those lines, those projected lines make sense or not, those would be some incredible matchups. Like Penn State Ole Miss is a rematch of a bowl game last year. You'd have Tennessee Notre Dame, which would be insane in Knoxville. Alabama Indiana in Bloomington is crazy, especially if you're talking about giving Indiana more than 4. And then Ohio State, Boise State, I'll be honest, like that would be the most incredible assortment of top-end running backs in a single game in a college football game this season. You got Travion Henderson. You got Quinshon Judkins. You got Ashton Genty all in the same playoff game. Yes, please. I'm like the Dave Chappelle meme. Rick James, just give it to me, please. Give me all the college football playoff action.
Amen. Give it to me. This is great. I love where we are. I love the fact that we're talking about this. I love the fact that this is even a thing. Because, there was a time not too long ago where this sport, you got into the playoff, the 14 playoff, and you weren't getting a game within 3 scores.
Yeah. I mean, they were ugly, right? How many playoff games when we were down to the top 4 playoff games recently that have just been, like you said, ugly. We got some good ones this weekend. Week 11 on the slate in college football, and we're going to get you ready for them. Big 12, ACC, everybody's scratching and fighting and clawing for playoff berths. A big one in the Big 10, maybe, as the number 1 team in the country goes on the road. But we lead it off with the biggest game of the week. Tennessee, Georgia, an elimination game of sorts? Maybe. We get into it next right here on BetQLU. Presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas.
You've been listening to BetQLU, presented by BetMGM. If you missed any of the show, listen back anytime on the new and improved Odyssey app.
Are you ready, sir? Start your engines. Let's go.
Astros money line versus the Marlins. Johnny Cueto, no thank you. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. How does this affect me personally?
Which is absolutely bonkers to me.
If you do the middle school math, is 117 yards per game that you gotta post each and every weekend.
I knew it.
Who has the upper hand? Do we think it's going to be the offenses, or do we think it's going to be the defenses?
How about Saturday's game? Let's just throw a random game out here.
I don't want to put faith in NC State. There's a chance we'll lose outright. Who knows? Jinx is definitely not paying attention right now. He's just vibing to the music.
Are you ready for the most interactive sports gambling show? Introducing BetQL's Send It In with PJ Glasser. We want to hear from you. Send It In is about your picks, your trends, and your fades. Share your thoughts, predictions, and your daily best bets with the Send It In community. Set your reminders, mark your calendars, and get ready to send it in on weekday afternoons at 1 Eastern on Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. On your home for wagertainment, the BetQL Network, presented by BetMGM.
Go for the betting cycle on BetQL with Cody Decker.
Cody Decker, former professional baseball player, turned professional smartass on the radio.
Sports handicapper Rob Brown.
When Penix Jr. plays USC, he's getting 400 yards.
Cycling all the top plays.
And Cody Decker, I think Florida can cover today.
And one outrageous show parlay.
1, 2, 3.
Oh! Let the chaos begin. It's Bet for the Cycle on the BetQL Network, presented by BetMGM.
Some would say that maybe he'll be chasing Super Bowl MVP. Really makes me angry that Knicks fans can't have anything. We've been bad for I get it. Now it's okay. 100% of attention on 9 million games tonight. It's a playoff game. We've seen this movie before, and we know how it ends, and it ends with absolute disaster. But I'll tell you, that's fun. But the most fun thing about betting on sports for me is this. Hey, there's no tomorrow. Now, come on, put Pickett in.
Are you ready, sir? Start your engines. Let's go.
Astros money line versus the Marlins. Johnny Cueto, no thank you. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. How does this affect me personally?
Which is absolutely bonkers to me.
If you do the middle school math, is 117 yards per game that you gotta post each and every weekend.
I knew it.
Who has the upper hand? Do we think it's going to be the offenses, or do we think it's going to be the defenses?
How about Saturday's game? Let's just throw a random game out here.
I don't want to put faith in NC State. There's a chance we'll lose outright. Who knows? Jinx is definitely not paying attention right now. He's just vibing to the music.
Are you ready for the most interactive sports gambling show? Introducing BetQL's Send It In with PJ Glasser. We want to hear from you. Send It In is about your picks, your trends, and your fades. Share your thoughts, predictions, and your best daily best bets with the Send It In community. Set your reminders, mark your calendars, and get ready to send it in on weekday afternoons at 1 Eastern on Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. On your home for wagertainment, the BetQL Network, presented by BetMGM.
Some would say that maybe he'll be chasing Super Bowl MVP. Really makes me angry that Knicks fans can't have anything. We've been bad for. I get it. Now it's okay. 100% of attention on 9 million games tonight. It's a playoff game. We've seen this movie before, and we know how it ends, and it ends with absolute disaster. But I'll tell you, that's fun. But the most fun thing about betting on sports for me is this. Hey, there's no tomorrow. And now, come on, put Pickett in.
Let's get back to BetQLU, presented by BetMGM.
And here we go. Week 12 has arrived in a big way on BetQLU, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas, alongside RJ Choppy. I'm Chris Mack. We are live coast to coast on the BetQL network. John Martin off again this week. He'll be back next Thursday as we inch just a little bit closer to the first ever 12-team college football playoff. If you missed it, we went over some of those rankings and what those matchups would look like just a few moments ago. Always there inside your Odyssey app in podcast form. Just search BetQLU wherever you get your podcasts. The big game of Week 12, Choppy, it's number 7 Tennessee. Your Vols at number 3 Georgia. A 10-point spread on this one? You kidding me? The Bulldogs, I'll be honest, they can't run the ball. Especially on the road, less than 3 yards a carry in true road games. Carson Beck looks, I don't know, bad. Forget not very good, bad. 10 turnovers to just 5 touchdowns in his last 4 games. And the Vols defense, especially scary up front. And this is a must-win. Look, we can talk all we want. I've heard Heather Dinich of ESPN say over the past few days that a 3-loss Georgia team could maybe sneak into the playoff. I'm sorry. 2 losses is max for me. I don't care what conference you're coming from and how tough your schedule is. This is a must-win for the Bulldogs at home between the hedges to stay in the CFP discussion against the Tennessee team that, look, they've been up and down, but they've got an elite defense, especially up front. And I think if Nico is healthy enough to push the offense a little bit, I mean, you're giving me 10, especially if you're giving me 10, I like Tennessee to keep it close.
Well, that's the key, right? Is what is with Nico? What's his status? That's going to be the question that determines this one. That's why it's at 10. Yeah. And I suspect if he plays, it goes to 6, and if he doesn't play, it goes to 14 or 13. Right? I think that's if they've got to do that. And I think Georgia's the favorite because they're playing at home and they're a good team, and they're also Georgia. And Georgia, names matter in this sport still. People like to bet on favorites. It happens all the time. Tennessee does have a really good defense, and that's the one thing that separates them. They might have the best defense in the conference. They're certainly in the discussion, and certainly their defensive front, which if you can control the line of scrimmage, you can control the football game at the college level. I mean, shoot, you do it at the pro level too. The difference is that you may have Patrick Mahomes, but if you can control if Tennessee can control the line of scrimmage and keep Georgia's run game off and get pressure on Carson Beck, I mean, he'll throw you 2 or 3 picks. That's just the way he has been. And if Tennessee has Nico, theoretically, you're not going to get the same kind of interceptions that you would from a Gaston Moore, who's the backup. Who's never had a start at Tennessee, who was a walk-on at one point. So, I don't know I have no feel on this one. I have a bad feeling about it just because I've got, some. I took a lot of beatings with this school. I've taken a lot of beatings here, and they wear on me.
Those orange checkerboard boxers, man, we can see them peeking through. I'll be honest, that's what it is. We can see you got some PTSD for the Vols, and I can totally understand. I do think both defenses show up, and I think that's if I'm making a bet in this game. Hey, look, first and foremost, Georgia money line's like almost minus 400, so I wouldn't bet that. But I do think Georgia sneaks out of here. If you want to say sneaks out of here with a victory over Tennessee. If you're asking me points, I probably lean Vols plus the points. But I think the best bet here is the under. Look, total's gone under in 9 of Georgia's last 13 games. Total's gone under in 5 of the Vols' last 6 games. 2 very good defenses against some big question marks at quarterback, whether it's how healthy Nico may or may not be for Tennessee or just whether Carson Beck is any good or not. You're giving me 48.5. I think I'm all over the under here, and I think that's my look for Tennessee, Georgia. But certainly, I think for Georgia, a game they have to have, especially at home. I think as tough as their schedule is, you take all those big wins they've had or tough losses they've had, they all get outweighed if you lose at home to Tennessee, even as good as this Tennessee team is.
I mean, that's true. Home losses have to weigh more. They just have to weigh more to the committee. You lose a road game in conference, you lose a road game in conference. That's the way it is, right? You could survive, at least in my opinion. You could survive road losses. You start losing games at home. I mean, those are tough. Those are tough to overlook. Especially when you have all these transfers. These teams don't have the same cohesion they may have once had. You got 18-year-old kids playing road games in front of 100,000 people. That's tough, man. It's tough. It really is.
It's tough.
And you see that, especially if you have a young quarterback.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's tough for kids to adjust to this level. It really is. This one is weird. It's a noon Eastern kickoff on Fox, which is 10 a.m. local time. Colorado hosting Utah in what is a massive game for the Big 12. Buffs laying anywhere from 10.5 to 11.5. The interesting thing here is that Colorado, they've been a second half team all year. They've outscored every opponent this year in the second half. And I think there's a good question about whether the Utes are kind of hung over from nearly taking out BYU in the Holy War last week, but falling just short, penalty call on what ended up being the pivotal play of the game. The over has hit in 4 of the last 5 Buffs games in Colorado. I think that's worth keeping an eye on as the totals anywhere from 46.5 to 47.5. This is a weird one for me, Choppy. I don't think I like a side based on points or money line. Look, it's very easy to look at Utah and say, they're a disaster. They don't have a quarterback. They're a mental mess after losing to BYU. But that seems to be just the spot where in the Big 12, the other team would swoop in and fall on their face.
Dude, I mean, look at the way Utah's played just their last 3 games. Defensively, they've allowed 13, 17, and 22. Now, it's not like they've played a murderer's row schedule, but I mean, their defense has come to play. If they even get a little bit of quarterback play, they're going to stay in this game. I mean, that's just the way it is. They're going to stay in it. I don't love either side from the points perspective. 11.5 is a lot. It is a 10 a.m. game. These kids are still asleep.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, they're still asleep at that point. There's no altitude advantage for either team, right? Both teams play in altitude regardless, so you don't have to worry about that. I like the hangover aspect from the Holy War from last week, but yeah, Colorado's a tricky one for me. I still don't buy that they're this I don't think that at the end of the year even if they finish 10-2 or whatever, I still will think if you were to say who was the 12 best teams in the country, I don't know that I would put them in there. I think if they played LSU, I don't think they would come close to beating LSU. I think if they played Penn State, they'd get destroyed by Penn State. But That doesn't mean that they're not going to get in. They're going to be in a great position to get in because they're going to go to the Big 12 championship.
Yeah, somebody's got to get in from the Big 12. It's just whoever's left standing at this point. I don't know if Colorado gets there. I think this is a good chance for Utah to surprise everybody. I really do. Because if it is a close game, and look, at the very least, I think I would take the Utes and the points, especially if it stays in double digits. But I think this is a big letdown spot for Colorado against the Utah defense that is still very good. I don't care what you say about anything else going on in Utah. The defense is still very good. You get the Buffs down late, and you're asking Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter to make too many plays. I think it could go the wrong way for Colorado. Another interesting game at noon Eastern, because you're talking about teams that are basically up against it. They got to win out or else they're out. Number 23, Clemson at Pitt. Saturday, noon Eastern at Heinz Field, because nobody calls it Acrisure Stadium because that's a dumb name. Clemson's got to run the table to get into the CFP. Most likely, right? They got Pitt, then they got Citadel at home, and a huge rivalry game in the final week of the regular season, RJ, against 21st ranked South Carolina. And even then, they can run the table there. Probably still need an ACC title game victory to get into the playoff, whether it's against Miami or SMU. Pitt, they blew their shot a long time ago. They definitely have to win out. Clemson, trips to Louisville and Boston College, and then the ACC championship game. Injury issues with Eli Holstein, their quarterback who looked great earlier in the year. Desmond Reed, their running back, has 1 touchdown in his last 3 games, under 4.5 yards a carry since they had a big win against Cal about a month ago. I like Clemson here as long as it doesn't get out beyond 10. That's when you start to get me a little bit sketchy because Pitt has played just about every opponent close this year.
Absolutely, exactly how I would look at this one. If it gets beyond 10, I am completely out of this one. If it gets, if it stays right where 10 is or even goes down into the 9s, I would consider this one. I think Clemson obviously is the better team. They should win this game. They should win it by more than a touchdown, but it's just, you want to go beyond a field goal. And I don't know that you do. I really don't know that you do want to go beyond that field goal. I think they've got to win out, and I think they got to win the conference championship game in order to get in. I don't see a 2-loss team getting in. Now, look, I think Ohio State could lose a game and still get in, and I think Penn State could lose a game and still get in. I don't know that you're going to have a 2-loss team that isn't from the SEC or Big Ten getting in. I just don't see it happening unless they win the conference championship. Excuse me, tournament. You got. I'm already in basketball season half the time.
Already,
Yeah.
We're not even there. Choppy's in hoops mode already. Look at this. I do think the under is an interesting look. Totals up there in the mid-50s, low to mid-50s, 53.5, 54.5. And you've got a couple of teams. Total went under in 4 of Pitt's last 5 games. Also went under in 4 of Clemson's last 5 road games. So something to keep an eye on there. One more game worth talking about on this week's slate. I think it's interesting because you got the number 1 team in the country on the road. The Ducks are visiting the Wisconsin Badgers. It is the night game on NBC this Saturday, and they're laying over 2 touchdowns. Well, right about 2 touchdowns, 14.5. Oregon, this will be their 8th week in a row playing a game. They've handled trips to the Midwest in this new Big Ten pretty well, right? Covered big numbers. They covered 30 at Purdue, 35-0. They covered 14.5 at Ann Arbor, beating Michigan 38-17. This is also 14.5. And they're off next week before they finish up at home against Washington. A little bit of a rivalry game, but also probably an opportunity if Oregon can get through this one to say, okay, we're in the Big Ten championship game. We feel good. I have not seen anything. I'm sure the numbers are out there, and this is recency bias, definitely. But I don't know if I've seen quarterbacking as efficient as I've seen from Dylan Gabriel this year, Choppy. Like, dudes at like 78, 79, 80% completion percentage, and they don't need to hit on a ton of big plays to just slice and dice and chop up the opposition secondary.
Yep. I mean, he's playing like Jared Goff was before the Houston game. That 3 or 4 week stretch where he was just completing like 80% of his passes. and that's what he's doing. And he has been playing at a level that the rest of the sport hasn't seen this year. And if there wasn't a guy playing 130 snaps a game, I mean, he's easily your Heisman winner. But you know what? He still might be. He still might get it because of he's undefeated, and they're going to wind up being undefeated, and he's a quarterback. And Colorado might lose the game. So he still might get it. I don't know. But he's been playing at a very high level. And there's a reason why, the Ducks have been unstoppable outside of the first couple of weeks. I mean, remember this. Let's just go back 8 weeks. They barely beat Idaho, and they barely beat Boise State. And we're like, what's wrong with this team? Something isn't adding up here. Obviously, they were getting – these guys probably met each other in August.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that's what's going to be absolutely fascinating is I have to imagine if things hold, right? We don't have anything crazy happen. There's a chance you get Oregon and Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game, okay? Then there's a chance you get Oregon and Ohio State again in the semifinals. These teams might meet 3 times this year. And if you're asking me to put 2 teams against each other 3 times in the same year, I'm going to take the team, I hate to say this, with the safer, more consistent quarterback play every time. And that's what Oregon is. Gabriel's just safer and more consistent, more efficient.
Yeah, he doesn't make mistakes. He keeps the team in it. And if they need a drive, he gets a drive. I don't think he's not going to be the first pick in the draft. He won't. He's not going to be a first-round pick. But he is absolutely a very consistent, stable, safe quarterback. He's a smart player.
We put some teams on upset alert in just a couple of minutes. We get you our best bets as well. And, an early peek, an early taste of some college hoops action as well. Coming up next here on BetQLU alongside RJ Choppy. I'm Chris Mack. John Martin off this week. We'll get him back. We'll drag him back from the Caribbean next weekend for you right here on BetQLU, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas.
You've been listening to BetQLU, presented by BetMGM. If you missed any of the show, listen back anytime on the new and improved Odyssey app.
Are you ready, sir? Start your engines. Let's go.
Astros money line versus the Marlins. Johnny Cueto, no thank you. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. How does this affect me personally?
Which is absolutely bonkers to me.
If you do the middle school math, is 117 yards per game that you gotta post each and every weekend.
I knew it.
Who has the upper hand? Do we think it's going to be the offenses, or do we think it's going to be the defenses?
How about Saturday's game? Let's just throw a random game out here.
I don't want to put faith in NC State. There's a chance we'll lose outright. Who knows? Jinx is definitely not paying attention right now. He's just vibing to the music.
Are you ready for the most interactive sports gambling show? Introducing BetQL's Send It In with PJ Glasser. We want to hear from you. Send It In is about your picks, your trends, and your fades. Share your thoughts, predictions, and your best daily best bets with the Send It In community. Set your reminders, mark your calendars, and get ready to send it in on weekday afternoons at 1 Eastern on Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. On your home for wagertainment, the BetQL Network, presented by BetMGM.
Go for the betting cycle on BetQL with Cody Decker.
Cody Decker, former professional baseball player, turned professional smartass on the radio.
Sports handicapper Rob Brown.
When Penix Jr. plays USC, he's getting 400 yards.
Cycling all the top plays.
And Cody Decker, I think Florida can cover today.
And one outrageous show parlay.
1, 2, 3.
Let the chaos begin. It's Bet for the Cycle on the BetQL Network, presented by BetMGM.
Some would say that maybe he'll be chasing Super Bowl MVP really makes me angry that, like, Knicks fans can't have anything. We've been bad for... I get it. Now it's, okay, 100% of attention on 9 million games tonight. It's a playoff game. We've seen this movie before, and we know how it ends, and it ends with absolute disaster. But I'll tell you, that's fun, but the most fun thing about betting on sports for me is this. Like, hey, there's no tomorrow. And now, come on, put Pickett in.
Are you ready, sir? Start your engines. Let's go.
Astros money line versus the Marlins. Johnny Cueto, no thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. How does this affect me personally?
Which is absolutely bonkers to me.
If you do the middle school math, is 117 yards per game that you gotta post each and every weekend.
I knew it.
Who has the upper hand? Do we think it's going to be the offenses, or do we think it's going to be the defenses?
How about Saturday's game? Let's just throw a random game out here.
Like, I don't want to put faith in NC State. There's a chance we'll lose
team.
outright. Who knows? Jinx is definitely not paying attention right now. He's just vibing to the music.
Are you ready for the most interactive sports gambling show? Introducing BetQL's Send It In with PJ Glasser. We want to hear from you. Send It In is about your picks, your trends, and your fades. Share your thoughts, predictions, and your best daily best bets with the Send It In community. Set your reminders, mark your calendars, and get ready to send it in on weekday afternoons at 1 Eastern on Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. On your home for wagertainment, the BetQL Network, presented by BetMGM.
Some would say that maybe he'll be chasing Super Bowl MVP. Really makes me angry that, like, Knicks fans can't have anything. We've been bad for... I get it. Now it's, okay, 100% of attention on 9 million games tonight. It's a playoff game. We've seen this movie before, and we know how it ends, and it ends with absolute disaster. But I'll tell you, that's fun. But the most fun thing about betting on sports for me is this. Like, hey, there's no tomorrow. And now, come on, put Pickett in.
Let's get back to BetQLU, presented by BetMGM.
It is BetQLU live coast to coast on the BetQL network every Friday night and Saturday morning, getting you ready for the weekend's action alongside RJ Choppy. I'm Chris Mack. John Martin off again this weekend. We'll get him back next week, and we'll continue to build towards what will be the first ever 12-team college football playoff field. We'll get you our best bets before we wrap up here in a couple minutes, and also the teams we think should be on upset alert. But hoops is underway, Choppy. It's a thing. Oh, yeah, we had basketball this week. And BetQLU all over it, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. Kentucky upsetting Duke. We had that. Big first win of the Mark Pope era. National championship odds are out. They haven't moved much from the start of the season or late off season. But I'll tell you what, the one that stood out to me, even though it wasn't a part of the Champions Classic or anything like that, was that first big game over a week ago now when Gonzaga absolutely ripped Baylor a new one. That's the one where I said, okay, here we go. Mark Few is again going to have an absolute buzzsaw. We'll see what happens when he gets to the Sweet 16 and Elite 8. But until that point, he's going to have an absolute buzzsaw on Gonzaga, anywhere from like 10-1 to 13-1. I think I still see a 20 out there in one spot to win the national championship. I'm a huge fan of that one, but it looks like the Kansases and Dukes of the world, UConn as well, are going to be the ones pushing for things this year.
It does. Was that Was that the game where Mark Few's kid got
He got
posterized?
dunked on. Yeah.
Oh, man.
He
That
got
made
destroyed.
Oh,
Yeah.
baby. That was poor kid. But,
Just
I mean, look,
demoralizing.
all the frustration from the national championship game a couple years ago was taken out right there from the COVID, the bubble, right? But, it's Gonzaga's a good team. They're going to be there at the end. They'll be there in the Sweet 16, and then they'll run into some team that is as good as they are talent-wise, maybe better, maybe worse, but, that's going to be the litmus test for them. I mean, we are beyond it when it comes to Gonzaga. We're beyond the cute Cinderella run to the Sweet 16 or the Elite Eight. You got to make Final Fours. If you're going to consider yourself a blue blood, and I don't think they're a blue blood yet because they haven't won a title, but they're getting close. They're for a non-title program. You just go look around at the programs that have not won a national championship in college basketball in the modern era. I mean, they're as blue blood as it gets, and they've been as good as it gets over the years. So they're one of those schools that has to get to a certain spot.
VJ Edgecombe still, like, how when you go to get maybe like it's a good steak, I don't know, who knows, it's a decent meal out and it's so good that like you're in the car on the way home and you're just picking the food out of your teeth. VJ Edgecombe still picking pieces of Joe Few out of his teeth, like, yeah, I still got some there, I got some there. Again, Gonzaga won, but poor Joe Few is still being peeled off the floor after that one. Obviously, BetQLU, you're home as we start to transition from football to hoops over the next couple of months for everything you need to know to build towards the tournaments in the spring. Upset alert. We push you on upset alert every single week. This weekend, no different. Last week, we had two big ones. We had Ole Miss beating Georgia. We talked about that one as 2.5-point dogs. That one, I don't think quite as surprising as unranked Georgia Tech beating Miami as 10-point dogs, Choppy. And it's thrown the ACC kind of up in the air here. Who do you have on upset alert this week?
I thought about Texas at Arkansas because it's a tough place to play, but I think LSU at Florida is the one that I'm going to go with. Florida is, look, it's a road game, and I know Florida's on like their 78th quarterback, but I don't buy Brian Kelly. I think that thing is teetering. They gave Billy Napier a vote of confidence. I don't necessarily understand that one, but they did.
Yeah,
I don't think they're going to do the same thing with Brian Kelly. I worry about this team quitting on him because he will ride you. He will ride those players this week at practice, and I wonder if they're going to tune him out as a 3-loss team. I don't think Texas loses to Arkansas. I don't see it. I don't see Penn State losing at Purdue. Certainly not Ohio State at Northwestern. And I'll tell you, I do not understand why BYU is only a 3-point favorite too. I saw a 2.5 as well over Kansas. I don't get that one at all. Even injuries aside, I don't see it.
No, I don't either, especially at home. We've talked all year long about how good BYU is at home. It's a different, I don't say completely different team, but a very different team. So I'm with you. I'm not, BYU could lay a touchdown against Kansas, and I think I'd still feel pretty good about the Cougars. And I'm, for the most part, on board with every other game that you mentioned. A couple of that I do have an eye on, though, and it keeps it in the Big 12, if you're looking for chaos. Utah getting anywhere from 10.5 to 11.5 at Colorado. I know we talked about this game earlier and looked at the total maybe more than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about this that tells me Big 12 chaos, and just when everybody is expecting Colorado to start to narrow in on the other championship game, title game spot in the Big 12, that's when they fall down. And it's Utah's defense. Like I said earlier, 11.5 feels like a little too much. And one other Big 12 game I definitely have an eye on. Arizona State is getting 9.5 at Kansas State. That's way two teams with the exact same record. I know there are injury concerns with the Sun Devils. That's definitely something worth keeping an eye on. And they are on the road. Cam Scatterbo going to be able to play? Don't know. If he does, absolutely. Give me the points and give me Arizona State. You know why? Because it's the Big 12, and the Big 12 is just filled with chaos. And I love me some chaos, and the Big 12 has been all about chaos to this point.
Man, I would not have thought that Arizona State was 7-2. I don't understand how Arizona State lost to Houston. Houston's not a good football team. They're not that good.
Do we just chalk that one up to the weather that night? Like, it was crazy. I want to say there was a thunderstorm delay at one point.
Yeah.
There was just downpour of rain throughout the entire game. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of. But you're right. I mean, that's the only thing that makes sense for that loss for Kansas State to Houston. And Arizona State, you're right. Somehow, like, quietly going 7-2, you look around and go, man, I knew the Big 12 was nuts. I didn't know it was this nuts.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, outside of the law, I mean, if they didn't lose to Cincinnati, which, I mean, for them that should be a bad loss. I mean, they're an 8-1 team, and they're 5-1 in conference, and they're going to be ahead of Colorado, or right there with Colorado, I should say, ready to go and play BYU in the championship game. It really is chaos. And the Big 12 has done a great job of managing and navigating through chaos over the years. That's what they have done. They have harnessed chaos.
Look, when you're a conference that has Mike Gundy in it, you're probably going to learn how to handle chaos more often than not.
Yep.
Something to consider. You're used to it. All right, time to get you to our best bets for Week 12 of the college football season here on BetQLU. Choppy, give the people what they want and what they need. Your best bet for Week 12.
So I was tinkering with the BYU against K-State, but I don't know that I'm going to do that one this week. I think I'm going to go with Illinois -3 against Michigan. I'm sorry, Michigan State. Illinois -3 against Michigan State. Michigan State's not a very good football team at all. This is a game at Illinois. I've seen it also at 2.5, so maybe you can get it there. I think Illinois is a much better football team than Michigan State is. Give me Illinois -2.5 to 3.
All right, that's an interesting one. The second tier and the second tier of the Big Ten is deep, but not very good. The second tier of the Big Ten is about as difficult to predict as the entire Big 12. And both of those teams, I think, definitely fall into that second tier of the Big Ten. And that's not a bad call. Like you said, if we're going to lean into chaos, let's lean into chaos all the way. Speaking of which, I've seen a lot of people predict that this is the week when Boise State trips up and costs themselves. I don't think it is. They're on the road at San Jose State, who's been better than some people predicted, laying 13.5 at San Jose State. I don't think Boise State has a problem with this. I don't. Maybe I'm being naive. Maybe this is the perfect spot for them to trip up. Maybe they're looking ahead. I don't think so. I think Ashton Genty should be the Heisman Trophy winner. I'm going to go out and say that right now. I know Travis Hunter is spectacular, can play both sides of the ball, can play every single snap in a game. But Ashton Genty, in my opinion, is, when I think back to classic college running backs and the kind who can completely dictate the pace and tempo of a game, Genty is one of those guys, and he continues to look like that for Boise State. So I think Boise State goes on the road, controls the tempo, controls the outcome against San Jose State, and handles the 13.5. So I'll go there for my best bet as we get you ready for Week 12, and we continue to push towards the first ever college football playoff of 12 teams, Choppy. 12 teams.
Yeah.
Do we end up getting more than one from either the Big 12 or the ACC? Knee-jerk reaction. What do you think?
No, I don't believe so. Even if Miami loses, they're not going to take a 2-loss team.
Right.
And I don't believe a one-loss. I don't believe SMU makes it without that. And I don't see BYU, if they lose a game, making it in. So, no, I don't believe so. I think there's going to be 4 from each, the Big Ten and the SEC, 1 from the ACC, 1 from
the Big 12.
Big 12.
Notre Dame. And a group of 5.
And then in a group of 5.
Wow.
8.
Man, I can't
9,
wait.
10, 11. Yeah.
That's 12. Yeah.
So
we both know that much about math that we can add 4 plus 4 plus all those ones gets us 12. We'll bring John Martin back into the fold next week for week 13 as we push closer to the conference championship games right here on BetQLU, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas.
You've been listening to BetQLU, presented by BetMGM. If you missed any of the show, listen back anytime on the new and improved Odyssey app.
Are you ready, sir? Start your engines. Let's go.
Astros money line versus the Marlins. Johnny Cueto, no thank you. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. How does this affect me personally?
Which is absolutely bonkers to me.
If you do the middle school math, is 117 yards per game that you gotta post each and every weekend.
I knew it.
Who has the upper hand? Do we think it's going to be the offenses, or do we think it's going to be the defenses?
How about Saturday's game? Let's just throw a random game out here.
Like, I don't want to put faith in NC State. There's a chance we'll lose outright. Who knows? Jinx is definitely not paying attention right now. He's just vibing to the music.
Are you ready for the most interactive sports gambling show? Introducing BetQL's Send It In with PJ Glasser. We want to hear from you. Send It In is about your picks, your trends, and your fades. Share your thoughts, predictions, and your best daily best bets with the Send It In community. Set your reminders, mark your calendars, and get ready to send it in on weekday afternoons at 1 Eastern on Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. On your home for wagertainment, the BetQL Network, presented by BetMGM.
Go for the betting cycle on BetQL with Cody Decker.
Cody Decker, former professional baseball player, turned professional smartass on the radio.
Sports handicapper Rob Brown.
When Penix Jr. plays USC, he's getting 400 yards.
Cycling all the top plays.
And Cody Decker, I think Florida can cover today.
And one outrageous show parlay.
1, 2, 3.
Let the chaos begin. It's Bet for the Cycle on the BetQL Network, presented by BetMGM.
Some would say that maybe he'll be chasing Super Bowl MVP. Really makes me angry that, like, Knicks fans can't have anything. We've been bad for... I get it. Now it's, okay, 100% of attention on 9 million games tonight. It's a playoff game! We've seen this movie before, and we know how it ends. And it ends with absolute disaster. But I'll tell you, that's fun. But the most fun thing about betting on sports for me is this. Like, hey, there's no tomorrow. And now, come on, put Pickett in.
Are you ready, sir? Start your engines. Let's go.
Astros money line versus the Marlins. Johnny Cueto, no thank you. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. How does this affect me personally?
Which is absolutely bonkers to me.
If you do the middle school math, is 117 yards per game that you gotta post each and every weekend.
I knew it.
Who has the upper hand? Do we think it's going to be the offenses, or do we think it's going to be the defenses?
How about Saturday's game? Let's just throw a random game out here.
Like, I don't want to put faith in NC State. There's a chance we'll lose outright. Who knows? Jinx is definitely not paying attention right now. He's just vibing to the music.
Are you ready for the most interactive sports gambling show? Introducing BetQL's Send It In with PJ Glasser. We want to hear from you. Send It In is about your picks, your trends, and your fades. Share your thoughts, predictions, and your best daily best bets with the Send It In community. Set your reminders, mark your calendars, and get ready to send it in on weekday afternoons at 1 Eastern on Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. On your home for wagertainment, the BetQL Network, presented by BetMGM.